Thank you everyone for joining us. This is Northwest Indiana Green Drinks February edition. And annually, every year, we welcome an advocacy group or an advocacy presentation to the screen. So today we are very thrilled to have Indiana conservation voters here with us to present. And we also have the Save the Dunes advocacy team, which includes our government affairs and policy manager, Harshini, and our advocacy intern, Katherine. So we're thrilled to have both of these teams here with us tonight. But before we get started, I will let everyone know that these events are co-sponsored by Save the Dunes and Michigan City Sustainability Commission, plus supported by NWI Region Resilience. This month's guest hosts are 95.1 FM and AM and Indiana Conservation Voters, Hoosier Environmental Council, the League of Women Voters of Indiana, and Indiana Wildlife Federation. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Desi and Delaney from ICV and we can get going. Thank you.
Thank you, Em. Let me share my screen. All
Thank you.
right. All good? Yes. Okay.
Yep, I can
Okay.
see it.
Yep. Um, all right. So hello, I am Desi Reibolt, the Conservation Campaign Manager with Indiana Conservation Voters. And we are going to be going over a run through of how the session works, the legislative session in Indiana, and how to get involved, and just a quick overview of bills that we are watching in the State House as well right now. So, like I said, I'm Desi Reibolt, and then we have Delaney Barbara Kwan, our wonderful government affairs director. Um, we are a family of organizations that includes a 501c3, C4, and a political action committee. So we are solutions oriented. We look for ways to um, advance and advocate for sound environmental policy, and then improve or delay uh, bad environmental policy and keep legislators accountable. So yeah, that's the gist. And I'll throw it over to Lainey.
Yeah, thank you, Desi. We wanted to quickly, if some of you were here last year, go through some of the slides just to set a base level of looking at how a bill becomes a law in Indiana and some basics on how to contact your legislator or find your legislator before we dive into what's happening this session. So, how a bill becomes a law, a little abridged version. First, it does a little thing called first reading. So a bill is introduced. It's referred to its relevant committee. So they usually have to spend a day meeting during session, is what I call it, when they're on the floor, accepting these bills on first reading and assigning them to their appropriate committee. Once they're assigned to the committee, it is really up to the committee chair. They hold a lot of influence and power because they will look at all the bills assigned to their committee, decide which bills get heard and when. Typically, committees happen the same day each week. They kind of have a time slot and they choose to meet or not to meet that day. And it's really important for members on this committee, especially if it is your legislator, because they are able to offer amendments in committee to the bill to make changes, improvements, add things. And this is your chance to also, if interested, testify in a bill publicly, and have your voice heard on the record. So, um, if it passes out of committee, which they take a vote on, it will move back to session, go on second reading. So they have to spend a day accepting the committee reports. Once they accept the committee reports, that following session day, they can do second reading. And this is a chance for the whole chamber, like the whole House and whole Senate, to also offer amendments to the bill as well. Um, This is even harder to do with amendments because you're getting everyone to vote on them. Changes to a bill. If there's no amendments on second reading, it will be engrossed, we say, and then move to third reading that following day. So this is kind of multi-day process that you usually have to go by. Um, and on third reading, this is the final version of the bill. It will be heard again. There can be floor debate. There can be questions to the author during this time. And then they will vote on it in the entire chamber. If it passes that, the process starts over again, and it will switch chambers. So if it started in the House with a House bill, you're now over to the Senate, and we do it all over again.
Oh, all right.
Okay. And then there's a couple things that can happen. Once it goes through this process again, if there's any changes in the original version of the bill, sometimes there's bills that go through the second chamber, no amendments, it's good as is. The author can send it straight to the governor's desk. If there are changes in the other chamber, the author has two choices. They will have to take that bill to the floor again for a full concurrence vote. So everybody has to agree that they like this new version, or they don't like the new version, they dissent, and they send it to conference committee. And conference committee has a big red flag because this is where shenanigans happen. It is very quick paced. Things will change every hour. These conference committees are made up by members of each party from each chamber. So usually the bill author, two House members, two Senate members, and they have to go to conference committee and agree on a final version before sending both of those back to their chambers, and they have to agree. So now you have to have a full Senate vote again and a full House vote again. Unfortunately, it is hard to follow these for public. They usually do not take testimony. Some do take testimony. It is hard to really follow from the outside. And if one person on the committee does not agree, they need all four committee members to kind of sign the committee report. If they don't, they have to go back to their chamber, remove a committee member, and put someone else on that they think is going to get their signature. So this is again where some shenanigans can happen, and we're pushing through legislation. If it passes that, they do a concurrence vote or they vote on this committee report. It is then sent to the governor, and the governor can veto it. However, we are in a supermajority, so it is very easy for the state house to override a governor's veto, but we only meet a couple months out of the year. So unless they meet for a special session, they have to wait until the following session to override that veto. So,
All right. Thanks, Delaney. So I know it can be overwhelming to figure out what bills to watch. There are, I think, 1,000 bills that were done this year, even though it was a low bill number. So there are organizations that do the work for you, and can kind of share their top priority bills. And these are just examples split up by, you can look for regional organizations. Um, so like your Healing Our Waters Coalition, maybe they'll do things like that, Clean Water Action. Um, there's state organizations like us, Indiana Conservation Voters, Citizens Action Coalition, Earth Charter Indiana. And then there's local chapters who are more like your indie or Mirror Indie newspaper that does like local indie issues and whatnot. So there's a a bevy of options to look at there. And then you can sort it by subject matter. So organizations like Indiana Wildlife Federation, you'll do more of the conservation, as I call it, proper interests. There's like environmental working group for your toxics, backcountry hunters and anglers for, again, conservation, but kind of more from that lens. And of course, there's the national organizations like the League of Conservation Voters, Environmental Working Group, and National Wildlife Federation. A lot of local or state organizations have those national affiliates that cover more of federal policy. So there's always going to be your subscribe button somewhere that you can hit that. For us, we send out monthly newsletter updates for just kind of what we're doing until we hit legislative session. Then we send out weekly legislative updates so you can keep track of what's going on, what bills um, that we're looking at, what you need to maybe do an action on. We have easy one-click actions, different ways to get involved and make your voice heard too. So we all try and do the work for you so you don't have to do the actual full-time job of following all these bills. All right.
Um, yeah, I think this is kind of mine, but it's a screen recording video on how to find your legislator. So this is the General Assembly website, which is iga.in.gov. But you can also just Google Indiana General Assembly. They have some drop-down menus on information to find your legislator, and you can go in, type in your address, and then it'll show you a little Senate, House, Congress map. And if you click search, it will pull up your representative, your state senator, as well as the congressional legislators and senators for Indiana. So you can go to their little kind of profile page, see their legislation, the committees they're on, as well as their contact page, which is a way to go about it. Um, if you're really interested in really getting their contact information, we can also help out with that because it's pretty easy to get. Some of them have taken those off their websites, like their state house emails. We also, if you follow us, will have kind of action alerts on specific bills that are really high priority to contact your legislator on, which can also be a way that you kind of go about that. But next.
All right. And then aside from finding your legislator, you can find legislation that you're following. So if we have a bill that we have in our newsletter that you're interested in learning more on, you can go onto the website. At least we have them linked a lot of the times in our newsletters, so you can go to the IJ website there. Um, this one is pretty user-friendly compared to other states, fortunately. So you can just type in your bill number or even maybe your bill subject in the search bar up there, and you can peruse the bill page. You can look at all these like bill actions, where it's at, who the authors are. You can get a little digest, a summary of what the bill is about. You can look at all the amendments. Um, Find out, just more information. It's pretty fairly transparent. Sometimes things are put on there last minute. During conference committee again, that last week or so of session, it can get to the point where there is nothing shared until too late. Um, so that's what we come where we come in. And then of course you can find your vote sheets like this one on legislation. This is an example from last year. This is a committee vote sheet. So it's good to just kind of play around with it and kind of figure out what you can find on there. But it will have pretty much everything you need to find or that you would know on any legislation that you'd want to learn about. And then kind of switching subject a little bit, we wanted to go over quickly just if you do decide to try and contact your lawmaker or have conversations about a bill or a subject that you are passionate about, there's a kind of key tips and tricks that we have to craft your message and make it clear and make it land. So one is to make sure you have a clear ask. You want to make sure you state it up front and make sure you repeat it in the conversation. So, for instance, if I'm asking for someone to vote a certain way on a bill, just introduce it. Hey, hi, my name is Essie Rybolt. Please vote this way on this bill. Just say it outright. Or please protect or please maintain our clean water. Please protect our water sources. Something like that. It helps to create a personal connection. Find something that connects you to that issue. If there's a story, if there's an anecdote that you have from your personal life, why you're interested in that, it's also helpful to put that in there and make sure you have that personal tie. And with that can kind of go into finding a common value with this person that you're talking to. I know sometimes it feels like you're on totally different continents with things, but I guarantee there is something that you have in common. So if you can just kind of find that, it helps make that connection even more tangible. So we have some example common values that you can look into. I mean, I'm assuming we're all Hoosiers, so that is just one common value right there. In some way, shape, or form, we're Hoosiers, so we're here. So, um, and then again, with that personal ask that is unmistakable, keep it focused. Try not to stray too hard or too far, and keep it focused on the issue at hand. Um, Remember to remain gracious. You are the expert. These people are working for you, um, and you are the teacher. So, um, also recognize that you are the one, again, the expert. So maybe you have jargon or words that you might be using every day in your life. They might not. So try not to use technical jargon or rely too heavily on statistics and numbers, and just keep it with your message at hand. And then with that, there's a good kind of roadmap for how to make a contact. You can use this in an email, phone call, or personal contact, like if you're in the state house, or at a third house meeting, which is in district meetings, really, to discuss anything with your legislator. So, one, introduce yourself. I have an example written over here for me. So, introduce yourself and the connection to your issue. State your ask, the solution to the issue. So you have those first four things I think listed on the previous slide there. Use a personal anecdote, tie it back to yourself, and then repeat your ask at the end. So sandwich your message with your ask every time, and then thank them, and then offer to provide more information to help and expand on it if they have any questions. So very simple, but in practice it can be kind of hard. So it's good to have it prepared before you make that contact. I like to write scripts myself if I have a quick thing that I want to make a phone call or something about, because I get nervous. So it helps. And then Delaney, I think this is you.
Yeah. So I mentioned a little bit ago about committees, and this is your opportunity to testify. And so if you really feel passionately about a specific bill and you can make the time and are following it really closely, you can always come and testify in committee. Find when your bill would be heard. So typically when you go to the General Assembly website, you'll see on the front page kind of a schedule and a calendar, and you can kind of click through the different days of the week to see when committees are scheduled. Whenever we give bill updates, we tell you if it's going to be heard in committee, what room, what time, what date. And then you want to prepare your testimony. So similar to how you're going to craft your message and your asks is keeping it short, being specific, sharing your personal experience, and trying to find those common values with the members on the committee to really drive home your point. Um, it's always best if you can to arrive a little bit early. Some of the committee rooms are small. So there is always hallway space to kind of watch from the outside and see when your name's going to be called, but the video has a little delay. So it's always nice when you get a spot in the room to sit down. You can sign up to testify usually online. So if you click on the committee, there's usually a button that appears a little bit, maybe like 24 hours before the committee, where you can like click to testify on a bill. Sometimes it's weirdly not available, and they usually have an iPad now in every room that you can sign up on there. And then you just wait until the chair calls your name. And don't forget after you testify to wait for questions because those are really great when they ask it, and you can get more time to kind of share your story.
Oh, and then yeah, they'll always have the information on there for you.
Okay, getting into this session. Um, kind of focusing a little bit on energy bills. That's my main wheelhouse at Indiana Conservation Voters. So there's quite a few moving through the process still. I'll highlight the active bills first. Just this morning, House Bill 1002, energy affordability, moved out of Senate committee. It has a lot of different components, which is a little bit unusual for Indiana bills. Usually they don't have a ton. It's usually one subject, but it focuses on different ways to go about addressing our current energy prices and high bills. So, first, it has a piece in it that mandates every utility have a budget billing program. It also is going to try to on-ramp people to be on that program more. It looks at increasing like low income customer shutoff protections with heat index days. So any heat index day above 95, um, you can't be shut off service. There is also a mandate for every utility to have a low income assistance program that is supposed to complement existing federal programs, which would be a first for Indiana. And it looks at how we make rates in Indiana. And there's a lot that goes into rate making. Rates are part of your final bill. They kind of determine, but are not the end all be all of what your bill is. So that usually happens at our regulatory commission and interveners, people that fight on behalf of residential ratepayers, our Citizens Action Coalition. So they go and intervene at the commission to try to fight back for lower rates for programs for individuals. Um, it's where we've been able to get efficiency wins and clean energy wins. So this is looking at changing instead of a utility kind of coming in whenever they want for a rate case. They have to do multi-year rate plans. So it sets a rate for 3 years and then they come in every 3 years and reevaluate their rates. It also has performance incentive metrics. So incentivizing utilities more to focus on things that the state house wants them to focus on with some incentives that they'll get some more money if they meet those and they will get less money if they don't meet those. One of them is an affordability performance metric and the other one is a resiliency performance metric. So how fast, for example, they can turn the lights back on during a storm after it happens. So that bill has had a lot of stakeholder engagement and input and bipartisan support, and it is moving along in the process for now. It did get recommitted to appropriations, so we are still watching that. Um, that is the big House priority bill, though, for energy. So, um, Senate Bill 240 is surplus interconnection service. So this can be pretty helpful for clean energy projects because when you're making your electrical grid, there are operators that kind of play around with where the energy is going. And you have an interconnection. So you could have a big natural gas peaker plant that's not used all the time, but turned on when you need more energy than you think you usually need. And that interconnection is kind of priced at a certain um, amount of megawatts. But they don't always use all of those megawatts. So there's a little extra. And because of this grid planning, it's harder to get new energy online because they have to wait to kind of get worked into the system. So this is a way to kind of pair up when someone has excess interconnection at their site So they don't necessarily have to go through the queue. And it's really great for smaller projects or renewables that aren't as big in their capacity. So it instructs like the commission and utilities to look at ways to use surplus interconnection service in Indiana. Um, HB 1333, you might have heard of this bill. There's been some news coverage on it recently. It's land use and development. It's gone through a lot of different forms at this point, and I think there's still conversation happening. It moved out of the House and it hasn't been scheduled yet for a hearing in the Senate, but it looks at some of the challenges around siting energy projects in Indiana. Um, Last year, they created these like energy production zones to try to incentivize projects to go where energy already exists. So if you have a coal plant, do a natural gas plant instead of putting a natural gas plant somewhere brand new. And in return, if you do that, you don't have to go through local zoning. So, there's a give and take with that. Um, the Energy Production Zone program is available to all energy sources except renewables. This opens it back up so it includes storage. It also plays around with data center incentives. So right now, data centers can get a 50-year sales tax abatement. This would make it so 1% of the savings that a data center could get from their sales tax exemption has to go to the local unit. Um, and there's a section in it that's been getting a lot of attention, which is around permitted use. It is a very broad section, basically saying if you have agricultural land that is of lesser soil quality, which they're trying to incentivize people to use, however, this makes it so you don't have to do a public hearing, you don't have to do a variance, you don't have to do an ordinance, and you can kind of build whatever you want there, which is the point of the bill where a lot of people are wanting clarification on. So that's moving through the process. And SB 258 slash 277, which Desi's gonna touch more on 277, but that is a big environmental bill, but 258 is the exact same language. And so when that happens, usually people really want that language to pass if there's two bills with it. So, nuclear facility permits. This looks at some language in our current code that might be a little bit outdated in regards to our Department of Environmental Management's responsibility to address like radiation and radioactive waste. That has primacy at the federal government with our nuclear commission, but our Department of Environmental Management and the state still has a say in all the other regular permits that you have to get for industry. And it can also look at any environmental impacts not related to radioactive waste. So the safety and radioactive waste part is the federal government, but everything else on that site is state related. Um, and it also gave the commissioner like some discretion in hosting a public hearing on new nuclear sites to discuss environmental impacts, but they are taking that out. So instead of updating the code to reflect what the federal government has kind of control over and say over versus the state, they are deciding to strip that code in there. And whatever the Department of Environmental Management does is going to be around, your cooling water permits, your air permits, and things like that. HB 1150, local regulation. This deals with a couple different pieces, but I think the piece that we're most interested in is it does some preemption. So locals have home rule. You can be more stringent than the state government. You can be more strict than the state government. with your local zoning and your HOAs or things like that. Cities right now have the option to do a thing called energy benchmarking, which looks at the efficiency of larger buildings, and you require those building owners to report out that data. And usually cities will help them find resources if they want to address and make their building more efficient, find broken meters, and then eventually kind of release scorecards of this is an A building, this is a very efficient building, so you're probably going to have cheaper utility costs versus this building, which is a C or a D. A lot of other states have these programs. The city of Indianapolis has one. This bill would make it so that program is voluntary and not required. So it's r kind of going after the crux of the program to make it required for building owners to report this. Um, and that is eligible for a vote next week in the Senate. So it's already moved to the House and it's already moved through Senate committee and it's up for a vote next week. Some dead bills that I just want to highlight as a positive, because we had some good conversations on them. This was the first year that a plug-in solar bill was introduced, both in the Senate and the House, with bipartisan authorship. And this looks at making sure Indiana can join Utah in being a marketplace for new plug-in solar. These are very small units that essentially and eventually you can just plug into the wall. Right now, the standard is that you would have to make sure that you have a certain outlet to plug it into. But these are wildly popular in Germany and it's taken off in Utah as well. And it's a way to really just offset your costs. And right now, with most solar, you need to pay extra fees to the utility because it's going based off rooftop solar, expecting you to kind of put energy back onto the grid if you don't use it all. But with plug-in solar, you're really just offsetting your use, so you don't really need that agreement because you won't be feeding really back onto the grid at all. You should be using all of that energy. And then SB 196, community energy. So this includes community solar. This had Senator Greg Walker, a Republican author, for the first time in the Senate. And this would open up more of third-party investment in the state to create small solar projects that you or small businesses could subscribe to and also offset your energy bill and support clean energy in your community without it going on all other, ratepayers or being utility owned. Um, and so that is the energy bills for the 2026 session.
Okay, and we have more conservation and water bills, so I'll try and go quickly through this, but not too fast. Um, I'm gonna skip 277 really quickly because that is a bear of a bill. So I'll just quickly go over the rest of these before I hit that one. So HB 1003 is a massive boards and commissions bill. So we've got like your um, oh gosh, your building commission, your natural resources commission, your environmental rules board. So there's a lot of boards and commissions that help navigate the regulatory space in Indiana. And it does a lot of cleanup. There are some old boards and commissions. There were some criteria set for either removing them or changing them. But the big one, the big piece in there that we're the most concerned about is it does away with the Natural Resources Commission that does meet on a regular basis. They have a quorum, so they have enough people to hold meetings. They do work to help with the DNR regulations and rules that they promulgate. So they don't really hit the criteria that were set for the boards or commissions that would be removed. So we're not super thrilled to see that go away. Um, so we're working on trying to get that piece removed from there. The 1003 is, I think, I don't know, 300 something pages. So there's a lot in there, but that one piece is the one that we're really focused on. So that one I believe is set to be heard next week. So we'll see how that works out. 1062 is wakeboarding and wake surfing. Representative Abbott from Northern Indiana worked with the Watershed oh my gosh, Coalition, another organization that we are friends with there to really limit the time of day and put limitations on when you can wakeboard and wake surf. And it's not just your regular, electric boat or motorboat that um, you think about with wakeboarding. There are specific boats that create really large wakes at really low speeds because they're made specifically for that. And they can be loud, they can be really disturbing to wildlife. You can have, increased erosion. You've got your noise pollution. So they can be pretty destructive. So this just kind of puts a little bit more guardrails on that. So we were excited to see that move through. It passed through the House and it is in the Senate. Um, I don't believe it's on the schedule quite yet. I'll have to double check on that. And then SB6, the extension of water services, it really just encourages more transparency if there needs to be private property run through to extend water pipelines. Um, if we're putting in a new water pipeline, so you need to you would be able to request public comment period on that um, decision. So it kind of just allows you to have more of a conversation if your property will be encroached upon for something like this. So, and then HB 1204 is a Representative Hall. This was introduced last year. So it really this is also resulting from some conversation over the summer for the summer study committee that mentioned this as part of the larger discussion. So it would allow counties to add a up to a $1 fee on like natural resources or state park entrance fees that will go to water quality improvements in the county or other issues that they may need to put that money towards. So it just really helps offset some of the wear and tear that comes from increased use of roads or facilities with places like especially Brown County, where in the fall people love to go down there and look at all the leaves while they're turning, but it also brings a lot of extra people that don't necessarily live there and they have to pay to maintain those roads or services that are needed, emergency services, if somebody gets stuck somewhere and they do get rescued, it just kind of helps offset some of those extra costs from people taking advantage of our wonderful ecotourism. Um, and then we've got 67, Senate Bill 67 was directly resulting from that summer study committee. And it really just encouraged or it would have the state look at the benefit of public lands on public health. We had a lot of great testimony for, I think, 2 days over the summer discussing how important public lands are to our public health. And we had veterans testifying that it was really helpful for them to recover from some of their PTSD and whatnot. So, and we had talked tourism dollars, how important they are from tourism dollars, and how much, it will help figure out how much we need to invest more in these public lands moving forward, to make sure that they are well taken care of. And then SB 224 is really, so this is an agency bill that are normally pretty benign and unexciting, just kind of code tweaks here and there that need to be made to make sure that we have things running smoothly with our different agencies. So this is the DNR's bill, which we are neutral on. It's just an edit for it. There were some things in there that we were originally looking at, but otherwise pretty benign at the end of the day. And then we have SB 277, which is another massive bill. This is the Department of Environmental Management's agency bill. And this one there is a lot of code cleanup where there's things that are old code or old references that need to be removed or changed to make sure that we are up to date and just kind of like cleaning house. However, there is a lot of extra goodness sprinkled on top there um, that will really make a lot of the department's duties and responsibilities in regulating our environment discretionary. So um, basically saying that instead of an obligation to, for instance, respond to proven pollution in an area, it would be an option. It's discretion to the commissioner's discretion. Um, so that there's a lot of instances of that. I think there's about 40 instances of that, more than easily, for different things, but specifically mentioned are water pollution, generally pollution, groundwater issues, groundwater pollution in wells, et cetera, et cetera. And it also has some provisions that would risk the EPA coming in and taking over. If we don't meet a threshold, or if we're not in compliance with EPA requirements, the EPA can come in and take over programs or enforcement. And then we could also risk losing federal funding for things that are important to have. So we don't want to lose that either. So that's part of, the bigger question of, why do we want to have this a discretionary thing when we need to make sure that we're doing this um, so, and then another piece is that it's a lot of consolidation of power from the Environmental Rules Board to the commissioner, and having a lot of flexibility in giving the governor a lot of flexibility in how he or she would make up the Environmental Rules Board. Right now, it has to be really well balanced, and there are a lot of restrictions on, where people can come from, what industries they can be from how many can be on there from um, different political parties, but a lot of that is removed or changed in a way that it can be weighted one way or another really easily, and removed. People can be removed at whim. So um, that is an issue. And then another issue is that consolidation of power again, moving responsibilities from the board to the commissioner, who is appointed by the governor, which can also mean that rules and regulations from the department can change with each incoming administration, which would also then mean, not consistent environmental regulation. It can make things harder for businesses. Not really knowing what you have to do to be in compliance or what you need to make sure, what boxes you need to check to make sure that you're good to go for things. So that is a very succinct overview of that really huge bill. So that is one that we are keeping top of mind, and that will be heard on Wednesday afternoon in the Environmental Affairs Committee in the House. Yes, in the House. And then I'll just throw out there's a couple good dead bills as well, that we can always address in coming years. We had a few positive PFAS bills, but we were working on HB 110. It was kind of a polluter pay mechanism for controlling PFAS. And then HB 1414 was a forest management bill that would set minimum thresholds for certain ages of tree stands. So, um, yeah, I'll rush through again so we can get to Harshini and Katie. Just want to throw out on Monday, we have Water Stewardship Day, which is at the State House from 9 a.m. to 3 a.m. You can sign up on that QR code. But it's an advocacy day. Come talk to your legislators and other organizations that do important water work, water quality, water quantity. Really just all things water. So if you want to have a conversation about water or learn about water, we've got some wonderful speakers lined up. Feel free to show up and we'll have free lunch and things to do. So yeah, that is Monday all day, basically. And then finally, if you have more info or want more information, you can sign up for our newsletter, get all these updates in real time, or email Delaney or me whenever you have any questions, and you can follow us on all of these social media platforms. All right, and that's all we've got.
Thank you, ICV team.
Thank you.
Harshini.
Yeah, Hello everyone. You heard from our amazing partners at Indiana Conservation Voters, but I just want to introduce myself real quick before I pass it off to my amazing intern over here at Save the Dunes. Um, I am the Government Affairs Manager for Save the Dunes. I'm just going to give a very brief overview about how our organization in Northwest Indiana has been advocating during the 2026 state session. Both Desi and Delaney did a really good overview of all the different bills that we're kind of focusing on and advocating on. But as part of Save the Dunes advocacy efforts at the State House, we've been trying to focus on how we strengthen both our presence and our impact down in Indianapolis because it's a little far for us up here in Northwest Indiana. So this year we've increased our capacity a lot by bringing on a part-time intern, Katherine, who is going to talk about how she has been at the State House physically. She's been allowing us to better track legislation that will affect the Northwest Indiana Hoosiers. She's been building a lot of amazing relationships with legislators and been able to show up consistently at different committees to basically advocate for different Northwest Indiana environmental priorities, especially ones that our organization is focusing on. So we've not only deepened our partnership with our amazing partners, such as our friends at Indiana Conservation Voters, but also all of our partners down in the Indianapolis area and other environmental organizations across the entire state. So all of these collaborations, especially with the groups that are focused on water policy, that's something that we usually focus on here at Save the Dunes, help really ensure that our advocacy is not only coordinated, but also very strategic and grounded in our shared environmental goals. Because, of course, up here at Save the Dunes, we really want to focus on protecting the Indiana Dunes National Park and the state park and the surrounding communities. So that also, of course, means protecting our water resources too. Keep our community informed and engaged, we created a bill watch list, and Catherine's going to show that in a couple of seconds. And done a lot of shared call to action. M has been posting a lot of our call to actions on our Facebooks and on our socials. Please just keep a lookout for them. And those are focused on key legislation around things like data centers, PFAS, the protection of our public lands, particularly the Indiana Dunes State Park. So the Northwest Indiana public knows what bills we're following and how they can get involved, how they can advocate to protect our region. I know that Catherine's going to talk about it in more detail, so I will pass it over to her. So she is our amazing advocacy intern who's been doing some amazing work down at the State House. So she's going to go over her experiences testifying and go a little bit more in detail about our bill watch list. So Catherine, take it away.
Yes, hello. Thank you so much for the introduction, Harshini. That was a very nice introduction. Um, I need to find, there it is. Okay, perfect. Um, are you able to see my screen? Okay, perfect. Yeah, so these were just some of the testimonies that we've done throughout the year. A little bit about me is that I'm a first year MPA MSES student at O'Neill at IU. Go Hoosiers as a side note. I also served 1 year as an AmeriCorps volunteer, and I'm very passionate about conservation and protecting public lands. For the bill watch list, we have some of the similar bills that ICV also had that we were watching, but some of the ones that we were specifically focusing on and that I'll be talking about are House Bill 1204, which was the natural resource entry fee. And then we also were looking at Senate Bill 67 along with Senate Bill 277. Um, so as you guys can see, we have a neutral stance on the House Bill 1204. That I'll get a little bit more into, but the majority of things we're supporting bills this year. So for specifically Senate Bill 67, that was written by Senator Yoder. And so I was given the opportunity to be able to speak with her and connect with some other senators and advocate for Senate Bill 67 and listen to some of the concerns that some of the senators who opposed the bill had, which was a very awesome and very cool experience. We also the bill was about relating to natural land, so it was studies that were being done, and it specifically was looking at how having more public lands increases public health outcomes and things. It was supposed to be a bipartisan bill, but there was a little bit of pushback, and so we were able to work with her to I think the bill is reading now in the House, so it's past the three readings in the Senate, and now it's getting read in the House. And then what the testifying experience was like. So this was my first time ever testifying actually with Senate Bill 67. It was my first day as well in this internship. But shout out Desi and Delaney. They were both like super helpful with calming my nerves and like making me feel very welcomed. And honestly, like they really showed me the ropes. And I felt like it was nice to connect with ICV and other environmental orgs to feel that like I had a team supporting me at the State House. And Harshini's also been really great. I know she's been virtual, but it's been really nice to text her throughout the day, and she responds very quickly. So shout out everyone. And another thing is that testimonies go by really fast, or at least the ones that I've done with the writing. So like my testimony, my mom took a video of it, and it was like 2 minutes long. So it goes by really fast that you stand up there to talk to them, but sometimes they can be longer and things as well. So then the other bill that I specifically was testifying was for House Bill 1204, which was authored by Representative Hall. And so this would then add a $1 entrance fee for like natural parks or public parks and things. And so we were neutral on this bill because we felt that the language was a little bit not super clear on where the like money would be going to, but we have also been working with like Representative Hall and other representatives to help with the language, and they did end up adding an amendment to the bill where it has been become a little bit more specified. This also was a bipartisan bill, and I also want to say that this passed in the House and is now going over to the Senate to be read. So then for this testifying experience, it was in a different room than the Senate Bill 67 was, but I think they were both in the Natural Resources Committees, but one was in the House and one was in the Senate. Um, but I was like, it was a much more calm experience to be giving this like testimony and things. And it has been really nice, like being able to like create and like foster like relationships with Save the Dunes and like people in the state house and things. So yeah, as we said, the Save the Dunes is working with representatives to further clarify the language in the bill, which has been very fun to work with and things. So then these are just some of the photos I've taken when I've been at the State House. I really think the architecture of the Indiana State House is beautiful. I actually am from Ohio, and I've been to the Ohio State House and the Indiana State House, and Indiana State House is just like so, so beautiful. And then there's the Bicentennial Bison, which is very cool and fun. But yeah, thank you. That was my presentation. A lot.
Thank you, everyone, for presenting and sharing all the good information for folks to keep on the beat as good as you guys are keeping on the beat at the State House. So, right now we have 5 minutes left. So if anyone does have any questions for Indiana conservation voters or for Save the Dunes, you can feel free. Yeah, Leanne?
Yes, I have a question. The plug-in solar bill died. How does it die? How do they die?
Yes, good question. I guess at any point in that process that I illustrated, if it doesn't move on by a specific deadline, then they are
Oh,
dead.
oh,
So, like we just reached kind of the midpoint deadline of session last week. So, in that first half, they start in their respective chambers, House and Senate. Any House bill or Senate bill that didn't meet that deadline and move on to the next chamber is
mm,
dead. Um, not all bills are heard in committee. So if they're not heard in committee, they are dead by the committee deadline. Um, and sometimes, if a bill moves out of committee and goes to the full floor and they don't want to bring it forward, they will not they say call it down. They won't call it down and it will die on the calendar. It won't
oh.
move forward. So,
I have another quick question. So if someone in the House introduces a bill, so it's HB and then some number, and then that goes through the House and then it goes over to the Senate. So then if a senator brings up the bill, is it the same kind of thing where it goes through the Senate and then goes to the House?
Yes.
Okay.
And what usually happens when they switch over, they'll get sponsors. So, like, a House author will select their Senate counterpart to sponsor their bill and kind of shepherd it through the
Huh.
Senate side and vice versa.
Huh. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks for your question. Uh, any other questions? Either you can drop it in the chat or come off mute. We didn't have any other questions
Can I come
on.
off mute?
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Ed.
Okay. Yeah, hi, I'm Ed. Um, is it Catherine or Katie?
I go by both.
You
So
go by,
yes, sorry.
okay. Um, what made the testifying in the House more agreeable or user-friendly than your testimony in the Senate? What was the difference?
I think honestly, like just exposure to testifying and like kind of learning the questions. It was in a different room as well. So in the Senate room, the senators were sitting like kind of above in like a semicircle around,
Yeah.
whereas for the House, they were all at a table and they were like sitting down and I was
Mhm.
at a podium. So I
Mhm.
think as well, like kind of the positioning of people was helpful to calm my nerves and things. So. It was just two different rooms as well.
Yeah. And it was your second rather than your first, right?
Yes, yeah, that was another thing as well.
Yeah. When I was in graduate school, I also represented Save the Dunes as a lobbyist. So good going for you. Great foundation for your career.
Thanks, Ed. Let's just make sure Facebook goes a little bit behind, so I'll make sure that there's no other questions there. And I did drop a link in the chat to follow us on Facebook, like Harshini mentioned. That's probably the best place to see calls for action right now. We know that like inboxes can get a little flooded, so we do send them over email, but not as frequently as on socials. So if you are on social media, you can feel free to follow us there and ICV as well. Both of us put out different calls to action, sometimes same calls to action, different formats, etc. But as always, we do encourage folks to call their representatives or senators over filling out forms. It makes more impact and they keep track of who calls and what they call about. So that's our other little PSA as the communications person for Save the Dunes. And Desi dropped the link to ICB's Facebook in the chat as well. Well, we are at time, so unless anybody else has any other questions, as always, thank you so much for joining. Recordings of Green Drinks go on to live on the Save the Dunes YouTube page. You can find us at Save the Dunes 1952 on there. And next month, we will have a presenter about pollinators and native plants for March to get us all prepared for the growing season. Can't believe we're getting there already. We'll be happy to say goodbye to winter and move on to spring programming. But as always, again, thank you so much and hope you all have a good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.